welcome to this episode of InConversation. I'm David Gavigan.
I'm Kate McGowan.
And today we're with Mark Gaster and Brian O'Neill, director of the film How to Be Happy. Lads, how are you?
How are you?
Very
well.
Not too bad, yeah?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So tell us a bit about yourself, lads. Where are you from?
Mark, you can start.
Where am I from? I'm from Dublin. I've worked in multimedia for years. Decided a number of years ago to try to move into film, and particularly animation. At the time, the Celtic Tiger died, so that got put on pause for a little while. And for the last 3 years, I've been writing and directing and making films.
And where are you from originally?
Oh no, Dublin, born and bred.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm this is Brian here. I'm also from Dublin. I've been making short films pretty much since I left school, which is longer ago than I'd like to admit. And I've worked professionally in the industry as an editor on a lot of TV for RTE and stuff like that, usually kind of reality TV and things like that. So my background, I've got a good technical background that's helped with the filmmaking. And about 3 years ago, the Masters, both of us, we didn't know each other at the time, but we both ended up deciding to do this Masters in Filmbase, and that's where we met, and that's where we made How to Be Happy.
How did you come to the decision to go, right, the MSc in Filmbase, that's what I want to do?
I actually had edited something for Chris Brennan, who had done the Masters year before, and he had actually directed one of the feature they did that year, which was Keys to the City, and he was telling me about this when I was editing for him, and I was like, a course that made a feature film, and I was like, I need to do that.
Yeah.
And it was as simple as that. I was like, that's what I want to do, and I did it.
So were you trying to make the transition from short films to features, and this seemed to...
Yeah, exactly. It just to open the door to that world somehow. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was remarkably similar. Quickly came to the conclusion that you needed a good, strong credit on a feature to get into the room with people, to get them to take you seriously, to let them to give you money to make other films. So it was a fantastic opportunity.
And had you been trying to do that previous to
yes, I hadn't been trying that long, because it became quickly evident that unless you had some feature under your belt, like it really gets you up like a couple of rungs of the ladder at the start. It was really, really very, very useful in that respect, and has actually been useful.
Yeah.
Like a marked change in dealing with people, so.
And your father and brother are involved in filmmaking?
To a certain extent, yeah. We're kind of an odd bunch. We were all somehow involved in the music industry for a while. My father was an agent and a manager, and he did business affairs for the Corrs and people like that. My brother was a photographer, and he primarily did music industry stuff. I mainly worked multimedia in the music industry, films, websites, and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't a conscious thing. We just all kind of moved at the same time. So my father is kind of involved now in financing in film. My brother is writing a script with Jim Sheridan, and I've directed a feature. So there's there's going to be, I think, a natural coming together of those three strands, hopefully, and hopefully it'll work, or it's going to make for some very unpleasant Christmases. So my poor mom will, But and so I'm talking. Me and my brother, he's also kind of got involved in the finance, the business side of it. So he's looking to produce something with me as well.
That's a good... you complement each other well then, in terms of different aspects. So.
Yes, hopefully we will. In theory, yes. In theory, it's a theoretical family. We're perfect. I don't know about practice, whether it'll work, but I'm sure it will.
Sorry, going back to the course. How many were in the course?
There was 2018?
It felt like 18.
I think it was 18. It was around the 20 mark anyway. But that number dropped during the year. A couple of people kind of dropped out for personal reasons. So we ended up making the feature with around 14 or 15 from the class.
I think so.
And a few outside people were brought in as well.
Yeah.
What was the criteria for getting in?
Because we would have been, I suppose, classified as mature students at the time. I think for younger people, it probably would have been coming out of college with a degree or whatever. Or it's a degree or equivalent experience. And I didn't have a degree. So it was actually one of these things that kind of sat on my shoulder for years, that I never actually got a degree. but I was working in the TV industry in post production, but that's not where I wanted to be as well. I wanted to be in the film world, and I didn't feel like I was in the film world. So I suppose my experience is what got me in. Yeah.
I have to ask as well, if there's a class of 18, I'd imagine, and as both of you have said, you want to be, get the credit of doing a feature film because it'll obviously help you do extremely well within the industry. It gives you that step up. How many people wanted to direct?
About 11, maybe.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was most of the people.
Yeah, so everybody went in with the idea of they wanted to direct the film.
Except for about 3 or 4 who would have been going for DOP.
And how did it come to the stage where it was like, right, we're going to have 3 directors?
It was always going to be 3 directors. Well, it was more or less, or it was like 90% certain it was going to be 3 directors. I was told that in the initial interview I did. I was told it might change, but it didn't change in the end. And I mean, the following year that did Light of Day and Poison Pen, that was 3 directors in each film as well. It'll probably stay like that. So obviously the idea being that like the more students get to direct as possible, but any more than 3 directors, and it's I mean 3 directors is complicated enough to try and get one narrative.
One director is complicated enough.
So yeah, it was tough competition, but
they were obviously keeping an eye on everybody from the start, and I think at some point, I think in around, was it October or November, we went down to the factory for a week and we worked with all the actors down in the factory, and I think that's probably where they started watching us and seeing who was working well with the actors and who was doing stuff there. Then what we had to do, we had to film a scene from a film that had already existed, a film called Savage. We were all given scenes and we picked a scene we wanted to do, and we had to recreate the scene. So to a certain extent,
that's an Irish film, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah.
And then, because a script was being developed simultaneously by Conor Horgan, who made 100 Mornings. He was writing the script for us, and we knew he'd be writing the script for the class. And so once that script was far enough along, they picked scenes from that, and anybody who wanted to direct had a choice of scenes from the film, which would ultimately be How to Be Happy. You had to assemble your crew, make it quickly, and then you had to pitch it to everybody, and what your vision of what you were going to do. And I think by that stage there was 9 of us left standing, and then Alan, Connor, James Fair went off and made their decision. So that's how it all worked out. That's how they did it.
And was that your first time directing actors?
For me, yeah.
Yeah. And how was that process? If in the initial, just recreating the scene.
Well, it was fantastic. I loved it from the outset, from the start. Like I must admit, it was actually once we went down to the factory. That's the day that I went. Yeah, I want to do this. I'm ready to do this. This is like, I don't care if I'm bad. This is so much fun. Like, we're making up a whole load of stuff, and people are crying and wailing and weeping, and it was brilliant. It was just so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and it was great because a lot of the time, and I think you probably experienced this as well, writing and editing, you're working by yourself, and I find that particularly with the writing, it's very hard, and it was nice to collaborate with people and bang things and move things. So it was in the factory that I'd first started to work with actors, and then so by the time the feature came around, we'd been working quite a bit with people, and with rehearsals and bits and bobs. So.
Yeah, well, I suppose I was slightly different to Mark in the sense I'd done a few shorts beforehand, so I had quite a bit of experience with actors. That was a mixture of actors who I'd auditioned and using my friends, so it was a kind of different environment as well for me, but I felt quite at home with it, but yeah.
So then how did you happen upon that script, the How to Be Happy? Conor Horgan was writing that.
Yeah.
And then how did you go about dividing up
who would direct? Initially the story was going to be kind of divided into 3 narratives. And because that's what Gaster City was done, that was the film from the first year, that was very 3 definite stories that just kind of were loosely linked, and this was kind of going to be originally conceived as that, but as the first outline came, we were more as a class, we were kind of really pushing towards just having the best story possible. Like, we didn't really want it to be loose connections. So we kind of steered Conor in that direction, and he was more than happy to do that. And it became the three main characters in it, Flor, Al, and Cormac. Their stories just got more and more intertwined, and it actually was just more like a normal feature film. And then, but that of course left us with the problem later on. How do we divide it up? So we kind of stuck with, as it turned out, I got Flora's character, she was private detective. Mark got Cormac, that's Brendan Gleeson, and he was a marriage counsellor, and Al was his cousin, and Michael directed most of Al's scenes. But we kind of, there was some scenes it was definitely Flora's scenes, there was definitely Cormac's scenes, but there was a lot of interweaving. So we kind of just figured it out amongst ourselves. Figured I'd go, I want to do that scene. Then maybe if Mark said he wanted to do that scene, we figured who would be the best person to do it, and we just delegated.
And watching the film, I mean, there's no sense that it comes together as a whole.
It feels like the one thing.
Well, I don't think it feels like there's 3 different directors.
No. Yeah.
Each person's got their own stamp on it. It doesn't come across like that. It actually comes across quite cohesive altogether.
Thanks very much. I think the reason for that is, and it was a decision that me, Mark, and Michael made at the beginning, that we should have just the one DOP on it, because initially there was the idea of like each director would have almost a different crew, and each director would have a different crew, and we'd rotate DOP. But we kind of really felt that would really impact how it would look. So
definitely, of course, like visually, you'd see the difference.
So that, I think that was a big factor, and that was Richard Toomey, our DOP, and Zia was focus puller, and Emmett Kenny was our camera assistant. And the fact that the 3 of them stayed working like that throughout the whole shoot is what made that work.
Yeah, really paid off.
Okay.
And I think it was also, even going back even further, the class were very involved in the story. Like when the draft came through, we all got together and everybody worked through it. We all came up with ideas, we gave them back to Conor Horgan. So everybody was involved the whole way through with the story as well. So everybody kind of knew what it was about, where it was going, what we thought we should do. And then, of course, the ghost in the room is our missing colleague, Mick, Michael Costine. Me, Brian and Mick, once we had, I think it was around the second draft of the script, we went through this period where we locked ourselves in a room effectively for nearly 3 weeks and just went through it over and over again, working it out.
That might have been the first draft still.
Was it the first draft? So by the end of that, in the terms of the 3 of us, we all kind of knew where each other was coming from. We all kind of knew what we were doing, and that nobody was pulling in a completely different direction. Or if something like that did come up, we discussed it and we understood it, and we either didn't do it or we went, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So
in a way,
nothing came out of the blue.
A lot of the directing happened in that room before we shot it, and that kind of ironed out even us fighting over scenes. We didn't fight over scenes, but at that stage we were so tired of the film from going through the script painstakingly that we knew where every camera angle was going to be. We knew how whether there should be camera moves, whether it should be handheld. We knew exactly what every scene was going to be like, no matter who was going to direct it. So the choice of who was directing what came after we already decided on the directing style for that scene.
That's one thing we did. We worked, the 3 of us, right up to... Well, actually, right the way through, really. But like up to the point, like I think it was about 2 days before we started shooting, maybe 3 or 4, that it hadn't been decided who was going to do what. Yeah. It hadn't been laid down. So we were all working on the entire thing the entire way through, rather than breaking off and going, well, I'm going to go away, I've got to do my thing, you know. So. And
there were times when during the shoot, just because things happen when you're filming, and we did actually have to swap, and you'd never notice because we were all so prepared for each other's scenes, so it was pretty seamless.
Can I ask as well, was that the course's idea or was that your own idea? I mean, it seems like something that the course would be like, right guys, you need to iron this out beforehand so that it doesn't get to a stage where you walk them off and do your own individual thing. Or was it yourselves going, right, let's lock ourselves in a room for 3 weeks?
No, it was their decision. It was the course's decision that it'd be 3 characters, 3 directors. So the 3 lead characters, each, as Brian said, I was Cormac, played by Brendan Gleeson. Brian had Gemma-Lia Devereaux as Flor, and Stephen Mullen played Al for Mick. But they were very good. They at that kind of once we got to that point where we got into pre-production, we kind of they didn't come in on us. Like we were on our own the whole thing. Like that's the thing. Like this film because like, it was made by that class. You know, there was no mentoring through it. There was nobody else on the set telling people what to do. There were a few outside people to fill in for where we had skill deficits, where we didn't actually have somebody to do that job, and it was particularly important. So there was some people there for that. But other than that, it was entirely the class. There was no outside interference. They were very, very brave. They really were, and they didn't. I think there was a few hairy moments at the start. I think Alan would come down and kind of stare us, going, "What are you doing?"
We'd stare back. Though.
And we'd stare back.
We'd stare back.
but like I think
no fear whatsoever.
Don't blink, guys. Don't blink. You know, and but both him and Conor were fantastic. Conor Murphy, who also runs the course, they led us to it. You know, and I think that was important because I don't think there's any point in having your hand held through that. You have to go through it because it's brilliant. You know, it's a great experience.
What did you know at the end of that process that you didn't know at the beginning, in terms of?
For me, because I think that my whole issue before the course was I knew how to make films, I knew how to shoot them, I knew how to edit them, I knew how to direct actors. Not perfectly. I mean, I learned lots doing the film, but I co-directed with another guy called Paul Bush. But we were very much doing it on our own, and we didn't feel like we were in the film world. We were in this kind of TV post-production land, and that's where we were professionally. We weren't really considered in the film world. And what we learned from that was, and even Paul, who wasn't involved in the making of How to Be Happy, but he saw me doing it, and he was just working with a big crew, and this idea that you need a team of people, you need a little army like to make a film. And it was kind of learning to respect that teamwork rather than trying to do it on your own. You can't do it on your own. Okay. Very few people can do it on their own.
Okay. And that was, because it was a lovely, happy atmosphere to be in. You know, everybody really seemed to be enjoying the mayhem in a way.
Yeah, it was actually great.
Not mayhem really is the wrong word.
Yeah.
But it was a time. You didn't have much time to make this.
No, we were under a huge time constraint, particularly with Brian Gleeson. We only had him for I think two weeks. 2 weeks of the 3 weeks that was in principal photography, and I think he was in about 80% of the script. So that was really, really hard. You know, it was really long days and glazed eyes at times and fraught nerves. But everybody was. But I think that as you were saying, that because everybody was getting on so well and everything worked so well.
I just have to ask as well, from seeing it as well. I mean, for a feature film from the MSc course as well, I think you've done extremely well getting such a good cast. Because I was looking at it going, how did they get Carrie Crowley? How did they get like Brian Gleeson? And it's just like.
Well, I think that we have to tip our hat to one of our producers, Richard Bulger, and that's the story where he pretty much accosted Brian in a chip shop one night when he was locked, I think, and they got chatting, and I think that's how that connection was made. So it's like
get Richie in for the interview.
So I mean, you have to, when opportunities like that present themselves, why not? So I don't know the time frame when that happened, but I think it happened in a chip shop, and he got talking to him. But that might have been before the film was actually happening, or I don't know. But anyway, yeah. But that's how Brian came on board. Other people, we did a lot of auditioning, and some people were just really obvious as soon as they started reading.
Actually, me and Rich, we went to see a film called Earthbound. To actually see Carrie Crowley in it. We went down. It was I can't remember where it was playing, what it was, but we went down and we were having a look at it, and she was there. Actually, I didn't realise that their whole directors, all the actors were. So Carrie Crowley was there. So we literally chased her down a corridor afterwards, and Dora stopped her and asked her to do it, and she was fantastic. She went to her cup of coffee with us, and she was really enthused. She was brilliant. Wow. So. And
had you, and kind of this is general, but specifically about How to Be Happy as well. When you're developing characters and then when you're casting, have you got a very specific look, or when actors come into you, is...
I would say when reading the script, I always make kind of this kind of visual connection with a character when I'm reading them, but it's very rarely what ends up on the screen. So I would say it changed quite a lot, and that's not a bad thing. It's just your initial reading of something is one thing. That's you getting your head around the story, and then you, as a director, as an actor, that character develops, it comes alive in a different kind of way. So I'd say it was completely different in my mind beforehand, but then you realise what works and what doesn't.
And like we did have people who would have come in, and I think initially when they sat down, we would have thought that they wouldn't be suitable, but through the course of their audition, they would have blown you away. And you would have sat there going, okay, we've got to make this work somehow. We've got to change something, or else maybe this person would be much better as another character that we hadn't told them for, So I think there was a lot came out of the auditioning. I also because the auditioning went on for quite a while, and it was very intense. It
was during that really intense period where we were going through the script. So we were in every day these guys were in a little bit earlier than me because I hate early mornings, but 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, just going through every single page meticulously, and then suddenly Richie's like, you're auditioning someone now. We're like, okay, we have to drop everything. And so there was that was weird. Well, that was one of the tough things about it, because we had to keep dropping everything to go and audition people. So it was this real crazy back and forth all the time. But
I think that auditioning as well, getting to seeing people read and perform and bring the thing to life. I think that was actually really useful for us as well, because it might have been a very long and a very tough process at times, but it really, again, it was another point where you're on, like, our understanding of what we were going to have to make is reinforced. And I think that's one of the real roles of the directors. You really have to know the project inside out. That's your job, really. You're the person who knows it better than everybody. And actually sitting through the auditions actually brought it more to life, because we didn't have as much time. We had next to no time for rehearsals. So to a certain extent, this was the rehearsal, or the auditions were our first feel for how this was going to be read and said and play out. And
there was actually very little time for rehearsal. It's kind of that's a testament to the actors, all the actors involved, that they had so little prep time. And then as a film evolves, all of us were tweaking the script just to make things work. Because we shot that a different way the day before, so we need to change something. I was quite notorious for writing extra dialogue and stuff, so I was always challenging them, but they just sucked it up and made it good.
So with the luxury of more time, in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think yes, that a lot would be
there always is,
always
is.
More rehearsal.
Yes, it would have been nice to, because we only had the cast together once prior to that for a table read, which went very well. But which is funny, because I think I kind of noticed, like, the table read kind of lulled me into a false sense of security, because it read well, but something reading well is not the same as it appearing well. And because it would have made, at that point, it would have been a fantastic radio play. It obviously worked really well, and but actually then seeing it's a different thing. So it's not like a rehearsal having a table read. There's no action, there's no physicality, there's no real sense of reality.
Do you know what's something weird about table reads? Because during the table read, someone was reading the direction on the script, and there's a difference between reading the direction, and people might laugh at something in the direction, but then when it's actually played out, the subtlety can often be lost. So the obviousness of what it is on a script is completely lost in a shot. So that's another challenge where you really have to look out for the subtleties of things when you're actually doing the scene. Because
you have to make sure stuff that you have to make sure it is there, that it can be seen and translates.
I think particularly with comedy, I actually think this is maybe actors will hate me for saying this, but I think comedy is such a tight format. If there's something wrong in delivery of a comedic line, it can lose it. It's not like a drama scene where you can allow an actor to really just evolve the character and the scene and how they say it, and let them do what they want to do. With a punchline, if the punchline isn't the right timing or the right, it has to be exactly right. It's very little, or else you're dealing with like someone like the likes of Will Ferrell, who's just this wild energy, but that's a different type of comedy as well. So it's just a very unique thing, comedy. But I think everyone really nailed everything in the script really well.
It comes across great.
Yeah,
really
no,
does.
that's
And I know we
the
haven't
thing.
said it, but congratulations on
Yeah,
the film. It's,
yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
it's really, really good.
Because it is, and it's probably the hardest. Romantic comedy is almost probably the hardest medium to do.
I think what I mean, as we already said, I directed Jimmy Lee Devereaux's character Flourish, who was a private detective, and that's actually part of the story. Like in my pitch, I said I wanted that character. I liked the whole private detective part of it. I liked that kind of. It was a little bit kind of it wasn't a thriller, but it was a little bit kind of spyish, and there was something nice about that, and that's what kind of fed into me about it. I totally forgot what the question was, but somehow I got here.
Well, actually, but that's the thing, because I did a lot of scenes. The scenes with Breen and Gemma Lee, particularly in the in this counselling office. So one of the things that I really had to work on, and that they were fantastic. They had this natural chemistry, and I think that's the thing you're talking about in the romantic comedy. If that chemistry isn't there, if you don't feel there's some sort of spark of warmth between these two people, that's when it really doesn't work. And it does work there. They can be quite charming to each other, and they're lovely to each other, and that's them. That was a lovely natural chemistry between the pair of them,
Yeah.
Can you take us through the funding?
We probably wouldn't be the best to
We
take
would-
it through the
no, we
funding,
wouldn't be
so
the
if we
best.
make a mistake.
Do you know how much of a budget you had?
Actually, I actually don't know the final budget. We raised on unfunded.ie. We raised 11,000. There's a plug there. I just did that.
We better get a discount next time.
We raised 11,000 on funded.ie, which was great. That was the bulk of the production budget, anyway.
I think the production budget might have touched up around, but by the time we'd done we had to do some. We did about another week of pickups and just scenes that we added in that would knit things together better and little bits and pieces. I think by the end of it, I think it was probably touching about 22,000. But that's including the camera package, which we didn't pay for. That came through Filmbase, the camera package. So that was worth quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing was made for about 22. I couldn't really tell you about the post how much that cost.
And there's a lovely sense of place and the location as well. I mean, you use Dublin so well too.
Yeah,
I think that has a big credit to Mark on that. That was part of Mark's pitch.
Yeah, I wanted to use Georgian Dublin because I kind of felt it is so nice, and I knew we could get beautiful sets and beautiful rooms, and so much of when you make a modern film in Dublin, it's played out in little apartments and dingy bars and places that don't look nice and don't feel nice, and there was no need for that in this film. It's a romantic comedy, so going for all the Georgian buildings and using all those areas and trying to keep all that, and going up to places like the Botanic Gardens and using that as well, because these are things that only seem to ever get used in period drama.
Yeah.
So why not take advantage of them for this, because
Well,
they're beautiful and they're
for
Dublin.
the intermediate room, where Breen does his counselling. Where was that? Like that
Marion
building
Square.
is great.
Yeah,
It's
Marion
really
Square.
nice.
It's it sounds wonderful. You know that these rooms are fantastic. They're beautiful. They're huge, so you can get a camera crew in. But their floors are made of paper, so there was people working in the building.
Really loud paper.
So I think that God love them. They were fantastic to us, but they literally couldn't move, or we would hear it. So things got a little tense, but they were wonderful. Yeah. But the other thing is the huge windows. We didn't have a budget that we could have controlled the light properly. So light did become a bit of an issue coming through the huge windows. But they're just fantastic locations. They're lovely to work in, but they really do come with considerable drawbacks. And it's easy now to sit and smile and laugh at it, but you have such a tight schedule, and you're just losing time all the time because you're waiting for sound to stop, or a plane to pass, or or the light you're just looking out the window for this one cloud, the only cloud in the sky, just to move, please, so the light can go back to the way it was, So, and that's the killer. Time is the killer, So you're just losing it and losing it and losing it.
And all those factors that are out, because you can't control the clouds.
No.
So no matter what you
As much as you try.
But you think it'd be, you get big lights, like we had the budget, big lights blasting through the windows, So,
but and I think I think though particularly in Irish films, because we're all like, it's such a small city, we're so familiar with it that there is that other added element of, oh, I know where that is, oh, that's the Botanic Gardens. It adds another kind of level of interest to the whole thing too.
I think, and I think for me, I actually think that Dublin, I think we're kind of saying this anyway, Dublin hasn't, or Ireland has, like, often isn't represented, well, the countryside is often represented really well, and Dublin doesn't get represented that well. So for me, I was totally on board with Mark's idea for that, and I like the idea of people kind of recognising somewhere but not really knowing it, because if it's really in your face, I mean, it's just it's too familiar. It can become, I hate to say, like Fair City, but people go, well, I could see that on Fair City, and if you're making a feature film, you don't want people standing beside the spire. Well, not that Fair City would shoot around the spire, but you just want to take it out from, like, I walk through Dublin every single day. I walk through O'Connell Street every single day. I don't need to see that in a film, is kind of what I'm saying. I want to see somewhere that I don't see every day, somewhere cool, somewhere I kind of recognise that.
Not quite on the
nose. It's nice to have a small familiarity with something, but also kind of go, that's kind of cool. I'm seeing something different is basically what you want to do when you're making a film. Some of the locations I've caught on, like we shot in the Botanic Gardens, and I've since I hadn't seen it being used much before, but I've seen it in at least 3 things recently, and one of them was Penny Dreadful, the big US series, and it actually didn't look any different to how they didn't really dress it that different. It's just people wearing period clothes. It was just a really cool location, and all they needed to do was have Josh Hartnett walking around. Was it? I'm not sure if he's in that scene.
Josh Hartnett.
I think it is.
I'm just not sure if he's in that scene. It might have been the Dorian Gray character, but just they were there in their period clothes, and it looked great. It looked the same.
Yeah, and it would have been nice to have more time up there as well. Here I go another time. We shot up there in one day, and it was actually what we had to shoot was actually very complicated. It doesn't seem it, but just the timings of it was very complicated. It was very hard to work out in one day, and me and Mick had actually gone up the day before to try and work through it. It would have been lovely to have another day there, just maybe with the camera team, and just a few of the actors just to move through, bring a jib up, and you would have had all. Like, it was just there's so much of the architecture in that place is gorgeous, and would have been great. They had a gangway up on one part, and it would have been lovely to get up there.
Penny Dreadful got up there.
They got on the gangway. Damn it! How dare they?
I think they had a slightly bigger budget than we did.
Just slightly.
Yeah.
In any sense, though, did the time constraint help? And then maybe not in terms of like...
No. No, it didn't. It never helps.
But in terms of like, you have to make a choice and you have to make a decision and you just have to go for it and you have to...
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it helped, but that happens and you just got to go for it. I think a lot of the choices were the best choices under the circumstances, and that's a choice. They weren't just choices that me, Mark, and Michael were making. They were choices the whole production team were making. The ADs were making. The sound people, the art department. Everyone had to make the best choices possible in a short amount of time. So I mean, the time doesn't help, but
yeah, no, it doesn't. Because I think those decisions are forced, and what you then lose sometimes is you don't have time for subtlety. You don't have time to get little bits and pieces to add in.
There's as the production, once it started, lots of work was done in pre-production, in a very small amount of pre-production. But once the production started and we started shooting, there was definitely stuff in week 3 that kind of got forgotten about until the day before, including locations. So there's a couple of locations in the film where we're like, oh, look at that place. That's not meant to be there. It really does not make any sense in that location. But other people won't notice it, although maybe they go, that's a weird scene.
I know when you're leaving me alone. That wasn't my fault.
It wasn't your fault. I wasn't giving out to you.
It
works.
For you then, Mark, similar to what we asked Brian, what did you take from the whole process? What did you...
I took a massive amount. I learn by doing, and I don't think I can learn any other way. So I learned, and I don't mean this I mean for myself. I learned how I wouldn't do it again.
Okay.
And I think that's a massively valuable lesson.
How wouldn't you do it?
I would certainly. really want much more pre-production. I would want to go in a lot more prepared, and the next stuff we're working on now, I'm going to really want to front load pre-production, and it's not because we weren't prepared going in, but if that you have that front loading done, it gives you the time. It's strange. Filmmaking becomes this massive thing, tedious thing about logistics, but the logistics is the magical thing that gives you the time on set. And you shouldn't. It's so expensive to be on set, and there's so much relying on it, and there's so many people there, particularly in our situation where so many people are there for next to nothing or nothing, and they're doing it for you, that you really, really want to be able to give them all the time and not be worrying about, okay, where are we going to put this shot? I thought this room was going to be bigger, you know, because I've only seen it an hour ago, you know, and little things like that, you know, that really front-loading pre-production. You'll hate to say this, but I certainly wanted to spend more time on a script, even though we spent so much time on a script.
Yeah.
And not because the script needed it. The script was fantastic. Conor Horgan did a brilliant job, and he did it really quickly as well. There's just so much, like the handling actors, handling people, handling because a lot of it does come down. And handling's a horrible word, like but it is. You are handling a lot of different things and a lot of different people. And I also, actually, one of the things that's really become apparent to me, and it's not a very artistic thing to say, but the business side of it. How you handle the business side of it, when you handle the business side of it, where you handle the business. I've learned an awful lot, particularly over the last year, because we've been...
Since we made it.
Yes, yeah. You know, how would I do it? How would we approach it? How, you know, so with an awful lot of lessons being learned there. And they're the lessons that really have to be learned.
It's weird, because I think it's a lot of Irish filmmakers suffer from this. And I mean, there's a great kind of revolution of like low budget Irish filmmakers making features for nothing, but I think a lot of them are kind of, and we haven't learned it yet, but a lot of the people haven't really they've got this great romantic idea about making a film, and they don't really know what to do with the film afterwards. And I think that's something that's not taught in colleges. It's not taught anywhere. There's no real life lessons for that. It's a tough. That was a big learning curve.
And I think the thing is, you actually have to. It's not. You have to know what you're going to do with it beforehand, not after. Now, I think in that this isn't a failing on anyone's part, because that wasn't what this was about for the course. The course was about making a film. But in terms of the lessons we've learned since, because like it's. You know, it's an entertaining film. Selling it should be.
Can I ask, actually, from when How to Be Happy finished and it aired, and premiered, where has it gone? What are you doing with it? Just from that business point of view, I just like to know that. I know it's done the festival circuit, and it's done quite well. It's just, how did it get onto the festival circuit? How did it? Just going back on what you say is that you make the film, but you don't know what to do with it. Then
the first premiere was we were absolutely ecstatic over this. We had 2 sellout premieres in Galway. The first one sold out, and due to popular demand, a second one was put on, and that sold out. So that was a really great start. From there, it played in Cork, and it played in a couple of festivals in the US, and it won Best International Narrative Feature in Garden State Festival, which we were delighted about. Fortunately, none of us were there, but
no,
we didn't
get
an
award.
I got a text in a pub going, "You just won an award."
Yeah,
hey, drinks are on you.
It was, what was the other one? It was in Chicago. It was in Chicago as well, and Richie, the producer, and Breen and Gemma Leah went over for that, and I think it was in the middle of a blizzard, which probably didn't help ticket sales. But I think they had a great time over there anyway. And it's got a few more coming up.
There's a lot going on for ones in America, but we don't know about yet. There's a couple potentially in England, and maybe further afield.
Canada?
Yes, possibly. We can't. Yeah, you know, this is. It's because it's funny, because I don't think none of us really knew like how to approach festivals with a feature. You know, so that's that. But like, effectively, we should have been probably doing that beforehand. We should have been laying the groundwork beforehand. And I don't think we didn't know that.
It's become one of these things that, like, with the quote unquote the revolution of film, the democratization of filmmaking with all these cheap, inexpensive cameras. At first, that affected the short films in festivals, where suddenly festivals were getting tons and tons of short films, and that's actually now happened to feature films, where loads of people are making feature films, and festivals can't actually screen them all. It's like where I think probably if you went back 10 years ago, if you made a feature film, you'd definitely be able to get it into
no matter what.
It's just like someone made a feature film, that's huge. But now it's suddenly like, okay, that's actually a lot cheaper to do now. It doesn't mean we're suddenly getting lots of great films. We're getting lots of films from all levels, but it's just it's much harder to get people to actually sit down and watch a film now because there's so many of them out there.
So it's like you've got to be laying that groundwork all the time, and you've got to be thinking of it beforehand. I think you certainly have to have business people, sales agents involved beforehand who are going to understand this. You know, we're going to ultimately you want to know how to do it, but you need those people, I think, in place beforehand, and not for what we were doing before, what we want to do in the future, like in terms of things like getting pre-sales money, all that sort of stuff. You know,
I think I mean, myself and Mark are working on a couple of things at the moment together, and I'm working on a couple of things with my other partner in crime, Paul Bush, and I think in both groups, I'm not going to go into anything where commercials is apparently a dirty word in the creative industry, but you have to think ahead. It has to make money. It has to be an actual career. There's no point in like it's supposed to be an industry, film industry, and industries make money, and that's the bottom line. You have to have a plan going forward, or else it actually becomes not an industry and it's just a really expensive hobby.
And it's an odd thing, you know, and it happens in every theatre or music. Commercial does become a dirty word, and yet commercial just means that a lot of people like it.
And a lot of people see it. And that's what you want to do. I don't think definitely not in it for the money. But you want people to see it.
But
it's not just that.
So much time goes
into
it, you know, as well. So if you want to be good at something, you have to dedicate your life to it. So you need to have a living out of that. So making films that are just good, and it's fantastic to get films in festivals, but you're not going to get paid out of that. So you do have to think, this is what we're learning now, you do have to think ahead and go, we need to make this work. It needs to work. You need to be able to, for a start, you need to be able to pay your crew and your actors, which doesn't happen a lot. I mean, I haven't been able to do that yet. I want to be able to do that. It's a big, massive
So
machine.
when you're now, because you were in Galway at the pitching for investment, what makes a good pitch? What do investors respond to in a pitch?
It's very hard to tell.
I'm personally terrible at pitching.
I know you're not. We pitched together. He's actually
he's
terrified me going into these pitches, going, I'm terrible. He was great. Great.
Sometimes it's a weird. Sometimes you get a vibe off someone you're talking to, and it's easy to pitch to them. It's like about being comfortable as well. And sometimes you'll just start off with the right sentence about the story, and then you can get a flow for it. And then if you're not comfortable, you'll say the wrong sentence, and you just sink it. I've got a big thing about, because I know I'm not going to be good at pitching all the time. I've got a big belief in making a promo of some sort where you can go, this is what I want to make, and this is how I can make it. And I think that's happening a lot. People are making promos, so people go, whether it's a scene or they make a fake trailer or whatever, and people go, okay, I get what you're talking about in an instant, like in 2 minutes, without even them saying the word. They can get it. So I'm a big believer in making a promo.
Okay. You have to convince them. You have to sell yourself. It's pitching is for directors what auditions is to actors. You know, and it's that same process where, like, no matter what's happening, you just have to keep going and pushing and pushing.
It's a weird thing though. It is like that, but it's also different. Where an actor going into an audition, there is a role in a production. Waiting.
That's true.
But a director pitching an idea, there isn't something necessarily waiting.
And in a way, when an actor goes into an audition, it's a chance for them to do their work. But you as directors pitching, it's another. You're not directing. There is another level demanded of you, another area of expertise demanded of you that may not come naturally to you, but doesn't detract from your ability as a director.
I kind of enjoy pitching. I've always kind of enjoyed it. It's kind of nuts. It's a really strange thing to do. You go in and you launch into this story and you're trying to sell it, and the guy's looking over your shoulder because he's already decided it's not going to work.
Characters.
Yeah. But the thing is, and we did it. You know, we did. We had people we really needed to talk to, and we knew at the start. Like, I won't say who they were, but they weren't in on that pitch. Mm-hmm. They were just not there, and we pulled them back in. Like, we were able to pull them back in, and it is a performance thing. And it is because you have to convince them, you know. And if you're going to get put off by somebody not wanting to listen to you, well, if you're put off that easy, they're never going to give you any money. And, like, you know, I think, you know, it was really, I enjoy it. I really enjoyed Galway this year. I really enjoyed going down and doing that.
I do recommend, like, if anyone's going anywhere to pitch anything, whether it's a private meeting or it's in a film festival market fair, I think doing it in twos helps. If you've got a partner in crime, whether it's a co-director or you've got your producer there, but it's great to be able to bounce off each other and get enthusiastic together, rather than having someone on the other side of the table who's really cold, not interested, and you losing energy because he's got no energy. Yeah. So it's good to have that energy between two people,
and it's good to have a number of different things there as well. I notice it because I've done it before in the past for single projects, and most people are very nice. That has to be said. Some people are horrendous.
Yeah. But
most people are very, very nice, and they listen to you. They give you pitch time, and they'll give you feedback on what they think, and they'll be straight with you. And that was good. But this year, we kind of, between us in every pitch, we had about three. There was 3 projects in total. One of which I'm not involved with at all. Is Brian and Paul. And having that, like, we had a project in development. You had a project that was well past script stage and had a promo, and we were down there as well talking about how to be happy. So there was 3 projects, so there was plenty to talk about, and it instilled confidence in the people you're talking to, and that's what you have to do, because if somebody isn't confident in you, they're not going to
yeah, you need a few projects, because ultimately, like, there were some people we pitched to and they said, I like the idea, but it's not really my thing, and that was fine because you were able to move on to the next thing, and that's really important, because you don't want to be pitching to someone and they may not just be, they might be from a company that just does action movies, and you've got a romantic comedy. They're just not going to do it. So you need to be able to move on to something else, or else you're going to have a really awkward 20 minutes. Yeah, because it's a bit like speed dating in the markets. It's very odd.
Is it a bit of a chicken and egg situation in that you have to have certain things in place to pitch? So you're kind of going to act, you're saying, if this happens, would you be involved, and can we put your name on this for a pitch, or is that?
Yeah, it is. There is that element of building a house.
Filmmaking is chicken and egg situation where, it's a weird one.
There's so many things.
But I think the thing is everybody understands that. Yeah. You know, and that's the other side of it.
Going to the industry with your eyes open, knowing that there's going to be so many variables and stuff, and that you have to commit to certain projects, even if they don't actually come about or anything like that. But
and there's such a long time period.
It is very time consuming. That's another reason why everyone in the film industry needs to make it work. They need to think of this as a career, and it needs longevity, or else you're just going to give up 5 years of your life maybe on one film, and then it mightn't do anything. So it needs to be a long term thing. I mean, it's the same as if you're a professional artist. You're not going to just do it for 5 years. If you're serious about it, it's your life. It's whatever.
You have to be working on more than one thing.
Yeah.
You have to have a using an analogy. You're not going to be a painter who's just going to paint one picture, for 5 years. Well, unless I don't know, maybe there are. Right? I don't imagine they have very much.
Well, you didn't success. You didn't learn all that skill in painting just for one painting.
Exactly. So you have to work on a number of projects simultaneously. And that's the funny thing, because you don't know where things are going to go, and that's why funny, because you can be talking to a person about one project and think that's the project you're going to be talking about, and then all of a sudden you mention something and they're interested actually in the other thing you have that you've no intention of showing them or talking to them about, and things sort of move that way, and it's strange.
You're very flexible.
You do, yeah.
Can I ask just individually yourself what your influences are? In terms of film, I mean, like when you were shooting How to Be Happy, I mean, did you look at any particular filmmaker and you were like, that's the kind of style I want for this, or did you go with your own thing yourself and decide?
No, I think my contention on the romantic comedy thing is they're not enormously stylistic. And maybe that actually played to our favour because there was no huge creative visual arguments, because you knew it had to be a certain type of thing, you know. So you were working to a kind of, you knew the sort of ones that worked. You like Richard Curtis type films. You know, you want that sort of nice chemistry. You want the humour. You want the, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
but it helps with a romantic comedy to have the humour. But
people are feeling good coming out.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so but. It would have been more an understanding of how that type of film should feel rather than because there's not like this, like there's nobody you could really. No, you know?
I mean I've lots of influences in all sorts of genres. It would be hard for me to pick one, but I do, and I hope to make films in different genres. So I think I'm because I'm really aware of I think I'm really aware of what works in certain genres. I'd feel comfortable dipping in and out of any sort of style. So I wouldn't say I have one particular, like the project I'm working on at the moment with Paul is an action film, and I would be lying if I can say that Christopher Nolan wasn't an influence on that. Like, it has to be big and bold, kind of in people's faces and massive. And I don't see a point in looking at Notting Hill and going, I like those camera setups, I'm going to use them in my action film. So, yeah, it's about knowing what works for what genre.
Is there any particular genres you're interested in? Again, I may be, you know, overshooting here or whatever, but I can't imagine both of you are like, yeah, romantic comedy. That's what I want to do.
We're working on another comedy with a guy called Gary Sheridan. And it would have a romantic element to it, you know. But this is kind of the commercial thing again. You know, you're coming back to that. Like, if we want to try and give somebody to give us to make more money to make another film, we kind of have to show that, well, actually we can work in that genre, you know. And we've made one, you know. So, but I have been working on 2 chiller sort of horrors and a thriller as well at the moment. And to tell you the truth, that would be more the side I'd want to go. If anybody told me my first film would be a romantic comedy, I'd say, really? You know, but
okay.
I'll take it, you know.
I have a question. Like the MSc course was digital filmmaking.
Yeah.
Have either of you shot on film?
No, and I was just going to say it. I never will. It's I don't know if you've seen this film Side by Side, Keanu Reeves' documentary. It's on the, I don't know if it's on the death of film or the birth of digital. It's all of that. And I mean, you've got people like David Lynch saying he's done with film. Like, it's just another technology at the end of the day, and it's gotten so good at this stage. Like, I don't know, is it better? Is it, like, I saw Oblivion. I rewatched it recently at home on Blu-ray, and it's just stunning. Like, and that's just shot in red. I mean, it's not film. I think it's. I think at this stage it's probably surpassed. Digital's actually surpassed film at this stage. I really do. Now, that's why Christopher Nolan's shooting on IMAX, because they're trying to keep film alive. But 35, I don't think is up there anymore. I'm sure there'll be other people, particularly cameramen, who dispute that. But it's just like a few years ago, it wasn't there, and that's why everyone was like, "No, film is much better." But it's caught up.
Okay. I think Christopher Nolan now has the budget to be able to shoot everything in IMAX. I mean, if he didn't have the budget, I think he'd probably rethink things and go. Yeah,
I reckon he's getting a little bit of a kickback from the IMAX people going.
Oh, probably, yeah.
But I also think the other thing is I'm not sure makes a big difference to an audience. Like, it's a kind of a film thing and it's a discussion thing, but audience want to go and be entertained, and that's your primary goal is to tell a story and to entertain and to be thought provoking if you can. Not everybody can. I think you're better off being entertaining than trying to provoke thought and failing miserably. If you can entertain and provoke thought, that's the holy grail.
Like, it's a little bit of an old conversation. I think it actually started probably about 10 or 15 years ago with like films like Festin that were shot on like DV cameras, and that's where the conversation began, where you had film cameramen going, that looks shit. I mean, it was a great film, but that's where the conversation started. Like, you can't shoot on DV or you can't shoot on digital because digital looks shit, and it did look shit. It just doesn't look shit anymore. So that's I'll never make a film on film. Unless Panavision go, here's lots of cameras and here's lots of film and so Panavision or whoever, if you want to give me lots of film reels, sure.
Can you describe your directing style with actors?
No, that'd be giving the game away.
I think it probably feeds into things I've already said. Like if I was directing a comedy scene, I'm probably going to be a little bit more of a Nazi with how things need to be said. And I hate doing that because I hate telling an actor how to talk. I would normally never do that. But if it was a comedy, I'd be a little bit more, if I felt they weren't getting it. Like, and it could be, they could get it, but they might just not, they might have a subtlety off. And that's very rare that they wouldn't get it. But if it's a more drama scene or a tense scene, I'd let the characters find themselves and let them. I'd only step in to give a little guide every now and then, but a lot of it comes out in the read through and the rehearsal.
So it's about casting, right?
Casting is so important, and that's one thing that, like, again, I learned with experience over the years of just not necessarily casting your mates who can't act. It's about getting people who are really good at what they do and who are comfortable doing it.
I think that's the funny thing is, I think that's the thing, comfort.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. You have to create something where somebody can feel comfortable enough to do what they're doing. Because like a lot of times actors are standing in front of like 30, 40 people who they haven't known, they don't know, they just walked in, they're drinking coffee, they're being ignored behind because people are doing their jobs, and they have to do something, and they have to do something in front of all of these people. And if they don't feel comfortable, particularly in you being able, like, cause sometimes, like, you know, an actor won't know why you're trying to get them to do a thing because you're shooting out of continuity, and you need a particular thing. And I think for me, I think if you have the time, the way to get it is through trust and comfort and allowing the person know that, like, okay, I know this will work. You have to trust me. Please trust me. It will work. And I think that's part of the problem with comedy sometimes. I think actors can be afraid to push it to that sort of, because there is kind of, even when you're the straight guy, there is a certain element, like, you wouldn't, that has to go just a little bit beyond normality and what is
comedy
normal.
Needs to be a little bit more than normal,
because it isn't normal. You're in an absolutely ridiculous situation that you would not normally accept in real life, and to play your way through it. You know, this is, and I agree with you, because sometimes I think sometimes there's a fear in actors to do that thing that's slightly stupid.
Yeah.
You
but
know,
even if it's like, okay, there's, again to say, Will Ferrell, like the Will Ferrell crazy comedy, or again something like Notting Hill, which is a romantic comedy, but it's set in the kind of real world. Still in that, like, an actor would have to push it. Like, it isn't. Yeah. It as much as it might try to feel like the real world, it's not the real world.
But it's credible within the context of
the
story.
Yeah. But it is probably more. I mean, an actor will always try to make the most natural performance possible. In comedy, it's kind of going against making it natural.
You have to make the unnatural seem natural, and ordinary. And
you mentioned Stranger Than Fiction, and I saw that about 6 years ago. But it had a brilliant soundtrack. How important is that element?
Actually, who did the score for you? The score is very good in How to Be Happy.
Kevin O'Brien. Kevin O'Brien did a fantastic job
really well,
in a really short amount of time.
From scratch,
completely from scratch. Yeah, I love that soundtrack.
When you're working and when you're kind of trying to pitch performances, are you thinking, you know what they say, that you have to leave room for the music? Is there any element of
in the scene?
In your head? Yeah.
Oh no, I wouldn't even think about that.
Because you don't know what you're going to get as well. Because you might know what you're expecting or what you want, but sometimes you'll get something that's brilliant and totally not what you expected, and you're not going to sort of go, I had a song in mind. It's not going to work with that.
the scene is the scene. Like, the scene has to play as best it should be, without it outside interference. Now, if the scene involves someone singing a song, you have to obviously take that into consideration, and the time. That's something where you have to really work on timing and stuff like that. But
like, it should always add. Yeah, not ever
but
overtake.
I find I kind of assimilate how to do all that kind of quite easy because of the editing. I kind of really don't think about it too much. I just kind of.
That was something I wanted to ask you at the beginning. Like, your background as an editor.
Yeah. Is
part of your brain always a little?
I would say it's the opposite of my I actually feel I don't have to think about it, which
Okay.
it helps
Okay.
massively. I kind of just, I feel very comfortable picking camera angles. I don't have to think about it too much. I'll think about the actual framing a lot more than I need to think about how everything's going to cut, because I'm pretty happy with how things will cut. But things like how music's going to fit in, that gets fixed in the edit.
That comes,
Just don't cut the camera too quick is at the end of the take or whatever, and just make, I mean, coverage is so important to make everything work. I think a lot of magic happens in an edit, and it's just about getting as much as possible in a limited amount of time.
Okay. How many shots do you like to do? Time allowing, money allowing.
As many as possible.
Is it the new Marion Cotillard film? She said they shot one scene 100 times.
Wow.
What
Is
was
that
it?
the
I will
Excellent
never do that.
Never do
I will
that,
never
no.
do that. That's kind of like,
It's very excessive.
are you gonna, what was going on?
Like,
They
you
had-
wonder how much even of that footage would even be looked at
Yeah.
when it comes to the edit, because it's just too much.
Do you know what the scene was or why they had to do that?
No, but is that their style? Because
That's not a style. There's
that's
something
not
else.
a style.
I mean, that could be
Well,
like
it could be. It
it
depends.
could be a Kubrick-esque kind of
Yeah,
thing where
exactly.
he's trying to push an actor to the limit,
yeah,
or
and
you're
break
trying
them
to
almost.
eliminate thinking almost in a way. So you're
But also to shatter them down, you know.
I do
That's
think
a
that's.
scary
I
thing
mean,
to do.
Kubrick was a genius, but I think there is an element of like, you're just being cruel for cruel's
Yeah.
sake. I think like a good actor will get there anyway, and I would love to look at the takes from The Shining and see where she was. What was that actress's name in The Shining?
Sally,
You know-
I think Sally something.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I would
Yeah.
love to see her her first, like I'd love to see her take 5 and her last take and see what the difference was.
If you had to pick, and it's probably the most horrible question
Yeah.
to ask somebody, but what is your favourite film? Now, I know generally there's a list of about 100 when we come to talk about to the people about this, and I have my own. I do have one in particular,
or
That
three.
is my favourite. but I mean, for yourselves.
I don't know. I get asked this question all the time. I can never answer it. I have no idea.
Is there
I'll enjoy. I just really enjoy anything that entertains and is good.
The Dark Knight will
I-
be in the top 5 anyway.
I really love Brazil because I really like Terry Gilliam's
Terry
films.
Gilliam's, yeah.
I just like, it's just so out of the box, you know. It's
Yeah.
just so far beyond. He's fantastic, but God, I hate being asked that question. I'll brush up next time. I'll have it.
Best and worst advice you've ever received.
Best and worst advice
Yeah.
we've ever received. I think the worst is a harsh word, but I think I've been told in the past that a director needs to just sit and look at the actors and not look at the monitor.
Oh.
And I don't agree with that, because I think you have to look at both. Because what's on the monitor, like there's no point in just sitting right in front of the actor and just looking at it from a completely different angle to the camera, because the audience is going to see what the camera sees, and that's who you're doing it for. So I think you have to be aware of both when you're directing.
Okay.
But that's something I've heard numerous people say, just look at the actors, and I don't agree with that. You have to look at what you're making.
Yeah, no, I just thought the same. I just thought that's
Yeah.
grand in theatre.
Yeah.
Things come out different on screen. Definitely.
Oh, the subtleties in if it's a close up on someone's face, you might not see that actually they did a great performance. If you're sitting back far away from someone, like Fassbender is a classic example of an actor who can really be really subtle in everything he does. But if you're sitting at the other end of a room just watching him and someone else talk, you might not necessarily see what he's doing with his eyes. But if you're looking at the monitor on his close up, you're like, that's it,
Okay.
one take,
Okay.
done, gone.
That is true, because it is a bit of advice you get given a lot.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of okay to put your head in beside the camera on the wide,
yeah,
you know, but you do need to step back and see what's happening.
yeah.
You know, I think the best bit of advice I was actually given, I was fortunate enough to talk to Jim Sheridan before it made How to Be Happy, and he was very good. He was talking to me about it, and I don't know whether doubting my abilities or whatever, he kind of looked at me towards the end of it and went, "Don't worry, it's not rocket science." So I think that's the best bit of advice I was ever given.
And your proudest moment, each of you.
God, I don't know.
I'd imagine
It's yet to come. Yet to come.
I'd imagine
No.
Galway has to be up there. The two sellout shows. You must have been pretty proud after that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Galway was very cool. I don't know. I don't try and pigeonhole my life into moments of like, oh, that's because if I start doing that, I like, oh, it's all downhill from here.
Yes, yeah.
You compare everything to that.
It's still uphill.
Okay.
I think it wouldn't be a moment, but I think it was the way the whole thing worked. I think because you hear a lot of horror stories, you know, about how going, but we had phenomenal people to work with. Like
Yeah.
the rest of the class were absolutely brilliant. The actors were fantastic, and it was an absolute pleasure to do.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that it worked so well, like
I do
as a
think
unit.
not being being a little bit cocky for our year. I think our year gelled quite well. Yeah.
I worked really hard.
And we're still working with them and like
Yeah.
Which
all
is
the time.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that year was a
The
big
bond.
team relationship that's
Okay.
continued to work.
Great. Cool. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you
Cheers.
so
Thank you.
much. Yeah, for giving up your Sunday morning.
Oh, you're grand.